Welcome to Pete's Property Podcast, brought to you by Buyers and hosted by Pete Wargent, buyer's agent, finance and real estate expert, and all-round property guru, plus published author. Join Pete for 30 minutes as he chats all things property with a new guest each week. Learn practical tips from the movers and shakers in the property industry and well-known personalities sharing their property journeys.
G'day, welcome to this week's episode of the Pete Wargent Property Pod. I'm thrilled today to have a very special guest, Cheryl Leong from the Growth Hub. Cheryl, welcome. It's great to have you on.
It's fantastic to be here, Pete. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a bit about your background and then we'll come on to talk a little bit about what you do at Growth Hub.
Yeah, absolutely. So without taking up a whole 2 hours, just in brief, I'm very much of a proud mum, but also a bit of a property nerd. I've been involved in property from a pretty young age. My dad was in construction, and back in the good old days, this is back in the 80s, when you could bring your children on site and stick them in the car while you had a meeting. I used to watch properties being built, and I was just fascinated as to how, people would come together and build things and create homes and communities. So it was from then I got quite sort of fixated as to property and how I could be part of building communities. And I guess from that, sort of going forward into my adult years, it has always been around how can I utilize the power of property to be able to connect people, sort of financial wealth, not just for myself, but how I can also contribute to people's journeys in terms of their, freedom and building, financial and life freedom.
So is that where the idea for Growth Hub came from then?
It was a part of it because what I noticed, having different roles in businesses sort of structured around property, I realized that a lot of people, I'm a mum with young children. One of the things I realized early on, I read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek. A few of you might have seen that. And it opened up my eyes to this idea of outsourcing and freelancing. And I realized I didn't have to be the person that did everything in my property journey or in my business or in my life. So very early on when this was about 10 years ago, when I read the book and I was starting up my own business and being in property, I was like, oh, what are the things, and I had my daughter, what are the things I can have someone help me do? All the sort of, whether it was research, whether it was basic admin, and it was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And so I've had quite a varied experience from then. But over the last 2 or 3 years, I realized that we're all these other business owners that were struggling with time. Just people, everyday people, not even in business, like people who wanted to do things, have a side hustle, do other things outside of their full-time work, but just didn't have time. And
so I remember the book. So Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek, and I think there was a lot of chat in that book about the Pareto Principle and the 80-20 rule.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the book, I was working, when I first read it, I was still working full-time in professional services. And I think I missed a little bit of the point of the book because obviously a big chunk of it is targeted at business owners, being able to outsource various parts of what they do. But I think what I partly missed was that you can actually apply those same principles even if you're working full-time. Certainly the 80-20 rule, focusing on doing the few things that get the results and not getting bogged down in all the minutiae of things that stop you achieving goals. But also the outsourcing aspect as well, and particularly for people investing in property, because I guess the whole idea is you're building a dream team of professionals to help you instead of trying to do it all yourself.
Absolutely. And you apply it to property. How much time if you're sitting down going, what am I trying to do in my property journey? And write down all the things that you do in terms of the tasks that you do. And that builds up your bank of things that I do for property. And then you sort of sit down and go, which are the parts that I really need to be a part of? And then you sort of realize now, I mean, for a lot of people who are working full time, their biggest challenge is time, right? So what can you do to be able to pay someone to do something that you're unable to do, but when you're working, someone else is working as well, so that you just get left with the 20% stuff?
Yeah, so I guess as a property investor, when you're starting out and you have one property, you can start to, well, for example, you could actually manage the property yourself. You could find the tenant, sign the lease. You could do the cleaning up and the day-to-day maintenance. But if you're trying to grow a portfolio of properties, that becomes quite difficult and pretty tedious if you're not that way inclined. So that's one area, obviously. And then you start thinking about things like depreciation schedules, which, you know, as an accountant, in theory, I could have a go at, but then I think, well, actually, I'm better off finding somebody who's a full-time expert who can do this thing properly. So I suppose the general idea of outsourcing is essentially do what you do best and then outsource the rest. And I guess so you can focus on where you add the most value.
Yeah. And so how I look at it, I look at all the tasks that I do and I do think about it. I go, wait, do I enjoy it? And I'm an expert in it. And even if I enjoy it, am I really is it the best use of my time? All right. And if it's not, then delegate it or outsource it to someone else. If it requires specialist skill, right? Like you said, if it's depreciation or something like that, and it involves specialist skill, then get a specialist to do that. Right? Property management, you know, there are aspects of it where you sort of go, maybe I can do it myself, but if I'm not that way inclined, I'll also outsource it to someone else. But it's more like if there are administrative things on research, because that takes a lot of time. Like if you're getting bogged down by that stuff, that one, you may not actually really like to do. You like to do the negotiation, you like to do the open for inspection, then do that and look at how you can create a little bit of a system, like a process, right? If I'm going to be researching this area, can I create a 10-step process that someone can follow and do exactly what I do?
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. I'm just thinking back to when I was 20 years old, and I've got an older brother he worked in a law firm in the city, and I remember he used to have a cleaner. And I used to think when I was a youngster, I'd never have a cleaner. Imagine paying somebody to effectively clean up the kitchen and sweep up after yourself.
Yeah.
But then obviously as I got a bit older, now I've got 2 kids, I'm definitely not good at cleaning and I don't enjoy it. And now I'd never be without a cleaner. And the same applies to things like ironing and other household chores. Now, I guess those are household type activities, but what sort of stuff do people outsource to you at the Growth Hub?
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a cool thing, because really anything that can be done virtually these days can be outsourced, and I'll give an example. I mean, we work with a lot of property business owners. So I'll give you an example, like buyers agents, property investment consultants, developers, investors. So a lot of the typical things will be research. They do a lot of research. So they're, building up a list of properties that are part of your shortlist. So they can do that. My EA, which means extraordinary assistant, helps with, she's my calendar ninja. So, she looks at my calendar, and if Pete says, I need an hour with Cheryl, she just does her thing. Emails, I don't read all my emails. I've got someone to go through and filter through them and work out what's important for me to actually action and what's important to actually reply to as well. So these are sort of the basic things, but I mean, I've seen like really there's so much that's possible these days with technology. It's incredible. My whole team is remote. Even my team that's in Sydney and Australia, they're remote. I don't need to actually see them face to face if I don't need to. But there's so much that we can do now. It really just comes down to, what do I want to let go of? What do I need someone to be able to help me with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the part of the big point of Tim Ferriss's book was creating not only financial freedom, but also time freedom. I guess that's the precious commodity that, as Jim Rohn said, you can always get more money, but you can't get more time. So in some senses, time is more valuable. I guess if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you've got to really focus on the most effective parts of what you do to get the key results. And then you can outsource the other stuff that's peripheral. And I can attest this meeting was set up by your EA and it all worked perfectly smoothly. Are there any potential disadvantages to outsourcing? Because I guess one of the things I struggled with initially was thinking, well, by the time I've trained somebody else to do this, I may as well just do it myself. And so you've potentially got some training time. And then I guess if you don't have someone you trust, then there's potential issues with confidentiality, because we've got somebody who does stuff for us in Noosa, but it's somebody that I guess I trust. You can open my post. It doesn't matter if we're not here. So are there any potential disadvantages, and how do you get around those?
Well, I'd say, I always do sit down and I assess if someone has a need. Is it essential that they are, and this comes out, like, what do you need? Is it a face-to-face? Is it a, do you need to go and speak to agents? And so, well, that's something, can you outsource it? And when it's outsourcing's, there's a whole range of terms, because you could be outsourcing to a buyer's agent that negotiates for you, right? You can outsource, someone ringing up the agents. That can be someone from overseas, if they've got a fantastic speaking manner. We've got lots of people that do that. So it's more a matter of understanding the skill that's required and finding the right people for it. So it doesn't really matter so much. It's and where I see people that have, in inverted commas, failed in outsourcing, or is more so thinking that they're going to get a unicorn that can do everything. That I'm going to plug someone out from Upwork, Fiverr, whatever. I'll give, they'll know via osmosis what I need, which is because we're so busy and we sort of think, everyone knows what I want to achieve, right? So where it's more so how to ensure you can outsource and delegate successfully, it does require a little bit of time at the front to sort of go, this is going to be short-term pain for long-term gain, because once you do that and you've got the process in place, you don't have to do it again. For example, every month, my EA processes my Bupa claims. I just send her my email. She does all of that. Takes her 10 minutes, but that's 10 minutes of my time I could be doing something else. And if you think about it, you sort of go, but it only takes 5 or 10 minutes. I refer to the term death by 1,000 cuts. How many 5 or 10 minute blocks do you have in your week, right? It all accumulates. So the more that you can have someone take that off your plate, it allows you to actually focus on the important stuff as opposed to being distracted on small things.
Do you want to save on buyer's agent fees? You could save thousands with Buyers Buyers. As Australia's most extensive network of buyer's agents, we can lock in highly competitive prices. Plus, our national network of buyer's agents are some of the best in the business. So get the Buyers Buyers advantage and talk to us today. Call 1-800-975-051 or visit buyersbuyers.com.au.
One of the difficult things in recent years has been getting attached to an iPhone and almost being lost without it, because, as you said, there's things like emails and calendar reminders and all of those things. It actually makes it quite hard to escape. I mean, one of the good things over the past couple of years, or maybe it was a blessing in disguise, is that I got stuck overseas during COVID.
That's right. I remember that.
So many nighttime phone calls with you, Cheryl. And I mean, in a way, though, it actually forced me to work remotely without doing the face-to-face meetings and some of those things that could actually suck up hours and hours of your time. And as it transpired, I was away for a long time and the world kept turning and stuff kept getting done. So, and actually, you've just reminded me of another good case in point there. I spent years training as an accountant, but when it comes to financial year end, I've got a few different companies. I've got personal tax returns for me and my wife, and we've got to do UK tax returns. But I would never do my own tax these days in bookkeeping. I could because I'm qualified to do it, but it would take hours and hours of my time. It could be better spent essentially doing more important stuff.
Or being on the beach.
Well, yes, if only. Don't let everyone know my secrets.
I'm busy working on the beach.
Yeah, I need to tone down the Instagram post. So do you think, on the COVID point, that's obviously changed living habits quite a lot over the past couple of years. I know on the Sunshine Coast, we've had COVID refugees who effectively couldn't go into the office, so they've moved up here. So obviously there's going to be more remote work and more flexible work. And to some degree, there's places like the Central Coast that have become really popular because people don't have to go into the office every day. Is this increasing the opportunities then for people to use things like outsourcing?
I think it's more so allow people to think more broadly as to what's possible. Outsourcing has been there for quite a long time, but we've been so used to this idea of hustling. We're busy. We've got it's almost like a tag that if someone says they're not busy, are they doing enough in their day? And I think what COVID did was help us shift our perspective about our priorities and what's important. That busy and hustling doesn't necessarily have to be the state that we need to be in. We've actually got to be clever with how we're spending our time, because travel and busyness and everything actually takes us away from what we really, really value, which is, time with family, time doing the things that we love. Like COVID was such a big eye-opener around, what really, and that's why people moved around so much in Australia, because it's like, we want the lifestyle. People didn't say, I want to move around so I can earn more. That wasn't the point. During COVID, it wasn't about earning more. It was around, preserving what's important to us and that lifestyle. And so I think it's been able to have people think more laterally around how can I put in place systems or the team around me to help me achieve this level of financial freedom and lifestyle that I really want in my life.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. If you go to any kind of a social event, people grab a drink and you sort of say, how have you been going? It's almost 100% of the time people will say to you, I've been really busy. It's almost become essentially a badge of honor, hasn't it? It's and potentially even a sign of success, being really busy. But it's almost invariable that's the response you get from people. But it needn't necessarily be a good thing. If you're spending a lot of time stuck in the office, as you said, scheduling, checking emails, doing things that could be better outsourced. So tell us a bit about what you do at Growth Hub then. What does your day look like, and how do you help your clients achieve their goals? Have you got any good sort of case studies or examples you could?
I have a fabulous story to tell. Actually, I've just got off a phone with new clients. They've got a cleaning business. They're two brothers. I'm helping them through. So they've got a new champion, which is like a virtual assistant that helps them in their business. So that she's come on board full time. But I'm taking them through this process of creating their end-to-end workflow, their systems, because they're wanting to grow their business and get grow more cleaners and all of that. But I sat down with them and said, what's your ultimate goal for this? Why are you doing this? Right? And what is your personal and your business goal? They said, Cheryl, our ultimate goal is to be able to build a business that essentially operates without us, has great cash flow, but allows us to then go back to Nepal, where they're originally from, and create impactful, community-driven projects and businesses. But we need to set up a business that allows us to do that, right? And so I sat down with them, and it was understanding where they're actually wanting to head towards, which has allowed me to sort of understand how can I help them, whether it's through systems, whether it's through team, to be able to get to that point where I can effectively help them exit the day-to-day of the business. And ultimately, that's what business owners want to do. If you're unable to exit yourself out of a business, you're essentially still in a job. So, and same thing, I look at property investing as a business, because business is just a vehicle. Property is just a vehicle to create some sort of financial wealth. So you've got to look at property, if it's investing or developing, whichever, as a vehicle. Likewise, that same mindset of how can I ensure that I've got the right systems and the team in place to help me get to that end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you do quite a lot of stuff on the real estate theme with property professionals as well. What sort of stuff do you do for people who are in the industry?
So in the industry, we work with a lot of buyer's agents. And what we've realized is there's so much in a buyer's agent's day to day that can be done by someone else. I find that a lot of buyer's agents are fantastic. Their skill, their superpower is finding the right deal, negotiating, and creating the strong relationships with their clients. However, all the other stuff in terms of the research and the operational and the keeping the client care going takes up a lot of time. We have champions, so virtual assistants that work with the clients to be able to do all that back-end stuff, all that back-end operational stuff, so that the buyer's agent can really just focus on, working through and getting some great deals for their clients. So that's just an example of how we help.
So Cheryl, if people want to find out more about the Growth Hub and what you do, where should they go to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to go, I'd say, is to our YouTube channel, because there's a whole lot of videos in there, and it'll give you an idea as to what really resonates with you, what applies to you. So if you go to YouTube, type in the Growth Hub. There might be a global at the end. If you have trouble, just type in my name at the end as well, Cheryl. And there'll be a whole lot of videos in there. If you just want to have a chat to see whether there's something that you can, that will be helpful for you, feel free to drop me an email, cheryl@thegrowthhub.io. So it's not com.io. So cheryl@thegrowthhub.io. And I can see, we can help or at least point you in the right direction. Be more than happy to.
Fantastic. And full disclosure, I've been a Growth Hub client, and we've had a number of fabulous assistants and always been a happy customer. So I guess what it's all about is just putting a value on your time, because as the old quote says, you can always get more money, but you can't get more time. So focus on doing what you do best and then outsource the rest. And on that note, Cheryl, it's a beautiful sunny day here, so I think I might go and outsource the washing of the car to my two toddlers, and they can earn some pocket money.
Good luck with that. You can't ensure the quality when you're doing it with toddlers, but
no, rule with an iron fist in this household. So Cheryl, thank you so much for coming on, and look forward to chatting again soon when I can outsource to your fabulous team again.
More stuff. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been an absolute pleasure, and take care. Enjoy the sun. Ciao.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Pete's Property Podcast, powered by Buyers. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time as Pete chats all things property with a new guest. And just a reminder that the information provided in this podcast is general advice only and doesn't take into account your personal financial situation or needs. You should always consult a licensed professional to discuss your individual personal circumstances.